welcome back to another episode of The Art of Business English. Today, I have the third installment on presenting for you all, and we're going to be looking at the vocabulary and techniques for closing our presentation and taking questions. So, if you haven't already checked out the previous two episodes, episodes 39 and 40 on presenting, then go and take a look, okay? They'll help you get a complete picture of the presentation development process. Now, as usual in this episode, we will be covering three main parts. Today we'll be looking at the importance of summarising and our closing arguments. And the second part will be looking at key expressions for the closing stage and question taking. And then I'll finish up with an example of a closing. Okay, so let's start with part one, summarising and closing. Now, if you all recall our three-step process from the previous episodes, you remember that we preview, give, and review at all stages of our presentation. So now I want to explain an important step for the closing. Now, during our presentation, we will have discussed the many points, okay? So each idea should have had a clear introduction, which is the preview stage, the body with supporting arguments and conclusions, so that's your give stage, and then the conclusion, which is the review stage. So this natural process helps to provide a clear and logical flow to our ideas. So therefore, the conclusion is also incredibly important for bringing all these ideas back together to reaffirm them, okay? So remember, many people in the audience need to have the main ideas repeated back to them in a summarized format in order to fully remember all the information that they've been exposed to. Now, the golden rule is that the fastest way to lose your audience's attention and break the unifying thread, or in Spanish, the hilo conductor, is to not bring all these ideas together at the end into a clear summary. So this is especially important when we are using a storytelling presentation format. So, it's safe to say that the end of your presentation is just as important as all the other parts that come before it, okay? And another thing to remember is that people will only often remember what you said at the beginning and the end of your presentation. And this is because they may lose focus during the body part. So that's what I said before. You need to remind them of what was said. Therefore, you should end where possible, and this should always be the case, with a powerful call to action, or CTA, or a convincing argument, if you want to be sure you'll get people to adopt your idea or plan. You should recall from the previous episode that we need to move people away from pain and towards comfort. So your CTA, or call to action, should paint a picture of comfortable bliss, okay? And the comfortable bliss is when your idea has been adopted. So the way to do this is basically we need to try and define a future reward, okay, which will compel people to adopt your ideas. And what I mean is, if you just list the ideas or the next step at the end of your presentation, but fail to attach a future reward to them, then you really stand less chance of having your ideas adopted. So how can we create this sense of reward that compels people to move away from pain and towards comfort? Well, firstly, we need to associate a direct benefit to the individual, okay? So how can we frame our ideas so that it will in some way meet the audience's needs, okay? Or how will it allow them to gain more freedom, or more influence, or more status, or how will they gain more time? So it's really important that we do attach some benefit, okay, to the idea. Secondly, we can also try and associate our idea with the immediate circle of our individuals in the audience. And what I mean by that is how can our idea help our audience to impact on their direct reports or bosses, on their customers, on their suppliers, friends, etc. So we really need to try and also think not just of their direct benefit, but then the direct benefit of those who are within their sphere. Now, finally, how will our ideas benefit the world? Okay, so that's a third option. How can we impact on the masses, for example, such as improving the environment? Remember, the more benefits we can attach to our ideas and then transmit these benefits, it's very important that we also transmit them effectively to our audience, the better we will be able to close our presentation and effectively just get things done. Okay, so I really want to summarize now. When we are closing our presentation with a list of action points, we need to try and attach a future award to the completion of each of these points by transmitting the benefits to our audience. Okay, and finally, before I finish this part of the episode, I just want to list the other important things that you should not forget or should not be forgotten in your closing. So, just quickly, the closing of your presentation, in many cases, it will be an important opportunity for your audience to ask questions, especially if you have told them to wait until the end. And also here, you can clarify any areas that may not have been clear. So if you're taking questions, make sure that you invite your audience to ask them. Don't forget that. Make sure that you thank everyone for their time. It's important because, this is polite. It does show respect for other people's time, which is probably the most valuable thing we've got. And be sure to share your contact information when appropriate, okay? In case anyone wants to email you, maybe with some further questions. And this is also a great way to network and develop your professional network. So don't forget to share your email address or your phone number or something like that. Okay. Now that we understand the importance of the conclusion, let's take a look now in the second part at some useful vocabulary and expressions. So language and expressions, as with previous episodes, I've broken this section into separate functions and with the supporting expression. So first, to give closing signals, we could say something like, well, that brings me to the end of my presentation. Or we could say, that concludes my presentation. However, I'd like to quickly summarize the main points or takeaways. Okay, moving on to summarising. You could say, I'd like to summarize the main points again. Before finishing, I would like to review the following points. To sum up, I would like to just repeat the main points. To quickly recap, I'd like you to remember these key points. And finally, so this concludes the focus of discussion today. To end, I'd like to highlight, and you go on and list those main points. So remember, I said it's very important that we repeat the main points because people probably will only remember what you said at the beginning and at the end. And those main points need to have benefits attached to them, and there needs to be quite a strong call to action. So moving on, we need to thank the audience. So I'd like to thank you all for your attention. That's quite a formal ending. And then less formal would be thank you all for coming. Another one, thank you so much for your interest and attention. And I can see that our time is just about up. So to finish, I'd like to say thank you. All right, now the next step would be to invite questions. So now if there are any questions, we change the intonation of our voice there and raise it at the end. If anyone has any questions, I will be more than happy to answer them. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to open up the discussion. So, moving on to accepting questions. Now, thank you for raising that point. I'm glad you brought that up. That is an important consideration. Thank you for your question. I will do my best to answer you. Okay, now qualifying questions is when we don't really want to give an answer. So we can say, I'm sorry, but I don't have that information available. Please see me afterwards. Sorry, but our company policy does not allow me to share that information with you. We can't say at the moment, but. Okay, so we can't say at the moment, but. So, if that is all, perhaps we could leave it there. Okay, so finally, just giving contact information, you could say something like, now, before I leave, here is my email address if anyone would like to contact me to discuss any further points. Well, before I leave, I would like to share my contact details with you all, just in case you need further information. So, there we have an overview of some essential language to help you bring your presentation to an end and to take questions from your audience. Now, in the last part of this episode, we'll take a look at an example dialogue for closing our presentation. So, creating the closing dialogue. Here, we're going to be using the same scenario from our 2 previous episodes with John Briggs wrapping up his presentation on sales data analysis. Now, he will also provide a strong call to action to make his closing powerful. So, off we go. That concludes my presentation. However, I'd like to quickly summarize the main point here today. As you can see, we have had a strong Christmas period. However, we are facing strong headwinds from a very competitive marketplace. If we are to start the new year with a strong first quarter, it will take extra work from all our departments to meet our sales objectives, but we can make those numbers a reality with a unified effort. I know we have been working our tails off this Christmas, but hang in there. We can pull together and meet our Q1 targets. This will set us up for a strong year, making the rest of the quarters much easier. And remember, the Q1 target rewards are bonuses and extra days off at Easter. So I'd like to thank you all for your time today. Now, if there are any questions? Okay, so if that is all, perhaps we can leave it there. Thanks again, everyone. So there is our conclusion with a strong call to action. Can you see where the call to action was and where the future benefit reward was embedded? Let's take a look and break it down. So, firstly, the conclusion has a pain point. We are facing strong headwinds from a very competitive marketplace. And then we have the strong call to action. We use emotive language such as we, strong, and unified effort. So if we are to start the new year with a strong first quarter, it will take extra work from all departments to meet our sales objectives, but we can make those numbers a reality with a unified effort. So then in the second part, we create the new future reward scenario, which we hope will motivate our audience to move away from the pain and towards the comfort. So we can pull together and meet our Q1 targets. This will set us up for a strong year, making the rest of the quarters much easier. So we want to make life easier. Then finally, we attach a clear benefit, for our audience. It's this last point we make. So it is the last point that we make so that it is fresh in the listener's minds. And remember, the Q1 target rewards are bonuses and extra days off at Easter. So there's 2 positives there attached to working hard and getting off to a good start in the first quarter of the new year. So there you have it. Powerful closing with a strong CTA and benefit attached future reward. So, well, that's the end. That brings me to the end of another episode. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson on closing presentations with strong CTAs. Please get in touch with me if you're interested in developing your presentation skills further, as we offer great online coaching programs which are developed specifically to meet your individual needs. And if you have enjoyed this episode, then please feel free to share it with your friends, as always, and your family or work colleagues. And remember to head over to the AOBE website and sign up for the full transcript and quizzes, as well as our free weekly coaching. Well, then that's all we have time for today. Until next week, take care and good luck with your presentations. Bye for now.